Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. Very much appreciated. And again, thank you for all your support and collaboration and also being a user of Asset Mule. But aside of that, just being a really cool human. I know your mission is very special, which we'll dive into here a little later. But real quick, why don't you just take a quick second to introduce yourself, tell folks a little bit about your background?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. Obviously, I love Asset Mule. Love what y'all are doing over there, and so this is a real treat for me. For who I am, I'm Adam, and for those of you I've never crossed paths with, I am a marketer. I work for a social impact brand. I donate. Where our mission is really cool. It aligns with what I want to do with my life. It's maintaining this idea of marketing, but also it's not just to the bottom line, right? It's helping missions that have real impact in this world progress forward and help to do that through technology. So really, ultimately, it's been a long travel to get to this point. For me, I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little bit, but that is, my life is SaaS marketing. And I've gone through a lot of dips and dives to get here.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about startup marketing and any sort of key learnings that really stand out that were perhaps unexpected.
Yeah, I think the things I wish I knew when I was younger. I think this is my, I think fourth technically startup now over the last handful of years. Um, the last three stops have been I'm really the sole marketer, the single solo bolo marketer, and I wish I would have known sooner that there's a huge difference between reporting directly to a founder versus what I like to refer to reporting to as a growth CEO, right? And the growth CEO is someone they bring in when, hey, it's time to ramp it up, a software company or a SaaS company to get to that next stage of growth, whether that be a bigger series funding or exit opportunity. Those two things are wildly different. For me, I finally found out and stumbled upon some really great advice. The founder, your job as a marketer is not to create like some kind of like world-changing narrative. Your job is to harness the energy and harness the thoughts that are coming from the founder and put them into some logical copy, put them into a logical positioning and messaging statement where it's their baby, right? They know the product the absolute best because they're the ones who built it. They know the VOC work has been done to make sure that what's being built fits in the market, right? Whereas opposed to that later stage SaaS startup where I'm at now, your job is to be creative. How do you take a legacy? How do you somewhat make it new? For me, it's about like, how do I make noise in a crowded market with an existing brand in a fresh way? I have a lot more leeway to get creative only because it's like, hey, the focus is on driving pipeline, close one deals. And whatever it takes to do that, let's go do that. We don't need to worry about product market fit. That's the biggest thing that changed because I felt like such a failure as a marketer for so long until I found that advice. I was like, oh, I've been doing it wrong.
And, if you were to think about kind of what that does for your KPIs or the way you start to think about the marketing mix, right? Those distinctions you talked about based on the, level of the organization, anything that really stands out that says, hey, you know what, this is how I approached it this way versus the other way?
Yeah, I think it's always everywhere I've landed. It's like let's take a look at ad spend and let's scale that back. It's always been the first step, only because everywhere I've been has typically been either trying to find that definitive product market fit, or there's just not a clear messaging that allows us to get penetration and make that ad spend worthwhile. The other step too is to understand content market fit. And this is important. This is different than product market fit, where I need to be able to create content that is found as valuable, allows me to make inroads within my ideal customer profile or the organizations we want to get into, and just make sure that we're not wasting time on just another random throwaway ebook. Like, we get it. People want to give ebooks for emails, but is it really valuable? Yeah, we're getting better as marketers. We're getting more savvy as that generational shift, I would say. And the way we market is getting more interactive, even more focused on VOC work, right? And as soon as I find content market fit, we go. Like, right? We're in the middle of that right now with I Donate, where We hosted a webinar last week, and it was just this idea and premise of like, hey, we're going to do a live workshop to let nonprofits submit their donation pages or landing pages. We're going to break them down in real time, give them feedback, and then let's keep on moving, right? 1,000 people sign up. That's the most I've ever had sign up for a webinar I've ever done.
Wow, that's a lot.
Which is great. And we had over 400 nonprofits submit their pages for us to review. That's a gold mine for sales, let alone the fact that now I know that for a fact I could build out so much more content and continue to remarket that webinar because people care about that. That has been the last two stops been my go-to. So the education piece, give more than you take. It's really become a mantra, not only of our Donate team, but also how I approach marketing as a whole.
I love that concept of content market fit, right? Like maybe we can unpack that a little bit. How do you know? Is it that you had 1,000 signups to the webinar? Are there other attributes that you can kind of point out that suggests, you know what, we have that content market fit?
Yeah, I wish we could just give ourselves high fives on registrations. Unfortunately, that's a leading indicator that there's interest. So at least I know at the early stages we've got the idea right. People, about 150 people showed up, which like that's much lower than a normal webinar, but that's also a much higher registration count. Plus, it's going into an extended holiday week this week, so I'm not really surprised. 15% attendance rate, 150 people, still great. There was so much interaction in the comments. That's the key indicator for me of like, yeah, I could present till the cows come home. I could probably make it somewhat interesting, but if I don't have engagement, I'm just talking to myself. The engagement was crazy. 150 plus comments within an hour, people commenting, interacting, giving thoughts, giving their opinions on what we were doing in real time. And then also the follow-up process. We had, I think, roughly 8 offers, executed in webinar for us to do one-on-one sessions to do the same thing on a one-on-one basis, right? The idea is, again, there's different thoughts on this, but it's like it's a soft sell, right? We want to give value. We want to continue to provide those ways to provide value in this particular function to nonprofits. They may not be ready. Odds are they aren't ready, but we're going to be there at the top of mind when it comes to that decision, right? Because we're giving all this stuff away. And it's a long play. You got to have a CEO that's bought into this. My CEO, my boss, is great because he understands he's fully bought into this give over take. And it's a long tail when it comes to content. So that's kind of how I measure. It's like, are people engaging? And what is the response rates in terms of what's the next thing that we're going to give? And do we have repeat people coming and back and almost acting like, hey, we're one of the go-to resources for this topic?
That's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey from, if I have this correctly, sales engineer to sales enablement to product marketer to now marketing leadership. I know that's probably given you a lot of different perspectives and insights into the go-to-market motion in general, buyer journey, and these sort of things. What was the driving force behind transitioning between each role?
Yeah, I started off as a tier 1 support rep too. So it's like I've seen almost every part of the customer life cycle, right? Some of those journeys, if we're going to be totally blunt, was fueled by I needed more money to support family, to support growing, house, all that life journey as he got older, right? Some of them, such as the enablement move, was, I need to get back to marketing. That was really where what I'm passionate about, what I love. Sales engineering was great for the time that I did it because it's at its core, it's still a product marketer, in my opinion. You're expected to know the product inside and out. You're supposed to know do the pre-VOC work, voice of customer work, so you know what you need to be showing to hit the pain points of the organization within the demo. And your goal is to create such a compelling story arc with the product as your backbone that there is no doubt that you're going to close that deal, right? So really all my stops have been focused on VOC, or the life cycle of a prospect to a customer. It's made me even more refined when it comes to speaking and presentation, being a little bit more self-aware as I've gotten older too, in terms of like, when am I talking too much? When is silence okay? How do I really approach understanding the pain points? Not just, hey, this feature can sell this and just throwing up your features, but rather like at the end of the day, like what really is making you like have a heartache from your job, and how can we solve that in a way that is both relatable to both business goals as well as solving individuals' goals? That is a common DNA across all of my stops, and it's made me
Mm.
an infinitely better marketer, especially if you think about from a leadership perspective, being able to understand that CS needs to be your best friend as a marketer. I don't care what position of marketing you are, like your CSM team, your CS team has some of the most incredible information insight about market trends, as well as what the customers are saying. Of course, there's also referrals and all that, but like that's
Yes.
that. How valuable support is. If without a top tier support team, it's going to be really hard to go ask for referrals and G2 reviews and things like that, because they aren't
Yeah.
happy, they aren't being supported. So like there's a lot of that backbone that was built for me to help me understand the entirety of an organization, how it should be orchestrated to work together to make my life easier in turn.
I wanted to double click on the moving from sales enablement to product marketing. And the reason why I asked this specifically is like, of course, at Asset Mule, we talk to product marketers all the time. And within certain organizations, sales enablement is doing some of the stuff that product marketers do at other types of organizations. And it's sort of is this like blended kind of like maybe blurry line between what those functions do. From your perspective, what are, first of all, what would you say are some of the things that maybe are very specific to sales enablement, and then also to product marketing? And given that within so many organizations, at least based on my research so far, given that there's so much overlap, how do you align those functions in a productive way?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. You may not get the answer that you want out of this one. There's been kind of this like generational jump in sales enablement, in my opinion. Right, when I was doing sales enablement for a fairly large, like middle-sized startup, like 1,400 people, our go-to-market team was roughly about 200 to 300 people, between CS, AEs, sales engineers, marketing, and so on and so forth. It was not the same that we know enablement to be today. Enablement in that era, it wasn't too long, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, was really a nice to have position or team that focused on giving the go-to-market team the tools they needed to win. So you think about like a Seismic, right? That helps you as a documentation hub. We control the deployment and adoption of that tool to the GTM team. You think about not so much as like the product marketing enablement, where it's like, hey, how can I create email templates? How can I create the messaging arcs? How can I give them the resources, the sequences, build them for them to make sure that our campaigns that we are planning go off without a hitch and they can focus on selling? That's like V2 or even V3, I don't know, right? So like that was a really interesting transition to say, okay, I got the grasp of understanding what sales teams need to be successful from a tech side and that enablement side. It's only, I would argue, not till recently, to like last year to year and a half, that I really started to understand, oh, this next wave of enablement is baked into a product marketing role. And this is what this is. How it helped me, I'm a product marketer. That was my first role in marketing after getting out of support. So like that's always been a part of my DNA. So it's always been at the forefront to understand my customers. Now my customers have changed. That stint for enablement, my customers were my go-to-market team. As you move back into product marketing, that changed, right? But still the sales team, I'm still looking to provide them things that are impactful, not just another ebook or another case study with no context or buy-in from the team. I'm just making it on a whim. Like that was thankfully never part of the arsenal.
Do you think that the top product marketers come from functions that maybe were more CS support or sales focused beforehand, or does it matter? Just because, for example, my co-founder Justin, he was a salesperson before, right? And he
Yeah.
started off back in the day as an SDR, worked himself up to AE, eventually ran a team, and then moved into product marketing. And given his experience in sales throughout the funnel, on the sales side, he was, I think, much more effective as a product marketer.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back further than that. I would argue that some of the best product marketers or marketers in general have food and beverage service in their background. Because what are you expected to do? You're supposed to balance so many things at so many times. You have to almost keep this like always on the ball like I am serving the customer at your top of the mind at all times, right? Because your tips depend on that. That translates so well. And like I go back to my days as a pizza delivery boy, as well as a pizza, baker and all that in high school and early years of college. But that set the stage for how I approach and help teams, right? And I think that carries over. You could spot them from a mile away, but if you're thinking about making the jump from org to org positions, right? CS team members do a great job because they know the strategic aspect and the vision for customers and what they want. They know the product and how to tie those into that. And oftentimes, those two are really some of the main ingredients to being a really successful product marketing manager that doesn't take 2 years to ramp, unless give or take. Like if you're in a technical, like a DevOps focused scene, that may take a little bit longer than say, for us, we're pretty straightforward. We do landing pages and forms and we focus on conversions, like easy enough. So variables, but like, yeah, the CS team, anything that's backed in that customer success and understanding the customer's voice is going to make for a much more successful PMM in my point of view.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Even though I haven't held a product marketing role, I have spoken to probably 1,000 over the last couple years, just given my last role at a SaaS startup that was focused on serving that persona or the PMM persona as one of the personas, and of course here at Asset Mule. But I know that when we've been looking as sales leaders to recruit great salespeople who could really understand the value and have those skills, both soft and hard skills, and understand the value of actually serving folks, right? Being that servant leader. So if you're a sales manager, but also as an NIC, right? As that individual contributor, that was always one that I've looked at. Have you bussed tables? Have you served? Have you done door-to-door sales? These sort of things. Developing, that ability to really care, I think for me is really important. Well, if we were to think a little bit about kind of the key nuances of social impact marketing, anything that really stands out to you, any challenges, like what are the best parts? Of course, like I honor you for really diving into this space, right? But what would you say to folks out there that really wanted to learn more?
Yeah, it's something that I wish I knew about sooner, and I just didn't know. I didn't pay attention to or understand that there was this whole world of tech focused on helping nonprofits, right? 'Cause it's been this kind of interesting merge, like I mentioned, of I love marketing, I love all the skill sets come with that, obviously, but I also got sick of doing the corporate run thing,
Yeah.
like just doing my thing, not really seeing any end result, and it's just padding a bottom line ultimately.
Yeah.
For me, it just wasn't working. So this is a perfect bridge for that. What is it easy? No, oftentimes it's a lot harder for a lot of reasons, right? And that can stem from the fact that even though nonprofits do a good job at raising funds, they still will never have enough to do everything they need to do, right? So you're thinking about from a selling into nonprofits, it's understanding even more so critically your ICP,
Mm.
using things like budgets, where we can access defined budget cycles thanks to tax forms, and understand, hey, like I'm not going to reach out to someone a month before their budget resets asking them to purchase something
Mm.
because the planning's already happened 6 months prior to that. And this is, just because the data is a little bit more available than anywhere I've ever been, which is great. And the people are there on doing their work, have such passion, and it's an honor to be able to serve and provide tools from a tech perspective to help them further their missions and ultimately change the world. Like we're not doing it, but indirectly we're a part of that. And that's such a cool, fulfilling thing to do, despite the challenges, despite the understanding that hey, it's a longer sales cycle than what I've normally experienced in the
Mm.
past years, but that's okay. If you build and strategize accordingly, you'll be okay.
I was actually thinking that, like, what is sort of the sales cycle look like within a nonprofit? On one side, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, given that you do have these budgeting cycles that seem to be more structured, just given the nature of a nonprofit. But on the other side, like, could it be more unpredictable because of the let's say, nature of the funding of a nonprofit? Anything that sort of stands out there?
Yeah, there's so many nuances, right? Similar to startups, there's a new mission and a new nonprofit popping up everywhere. There's roughly 1.9 million nonprofits in the
Wow.
US alone. So you think about that from a market, and that's grown over the last 2 years exponentially too. So granted, we're not trying to boil the ocean. We are not for everyone of those 1.9 million nonprofits. We figured out we're roughly about 99,000 of those are like our ideal fit. We know based on past trends, past closed won loss analysis, and our current customers, here's where we play well, here's where we win well. That's what we're focusing on, which is a really cool conversation to know. We settled that within like 2 weeks of me being here, which was great. So within that, like, yeah, you always have funding. You always have a donor who pops in, and provides a $5,000, $10,000 check. Where if we're top of mind or we're on the short list of things that they want to do, that provides that ability, and you'll get a couple of those every year where it's just like, surprise, we're going to do this now.
Got
You're
it.
like, sweet. You can't bet on that. Those are kind of those like best case scenarios where it's like the stars align.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're playing conversations where my podcast co-host Kate's got this in my brain, this idea of drumbeat marketing. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but you're consistently showing up in all the places your ICP is or is showing up, right? And that's the communities, it's the trade shows, or the events, it's and the digital spaces that they go frequent, providing great content that people want to see, and having a website that clearly communicates what you do when they do land there to convert into high impact opportunities, right? All of it plays into that, and it's just really a game of measuring as much as you can, but knowing that there is some art to just being there and present, ready to go.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Question. You have an incredible podcast, Don't Be a SaaS. I love that podcast. I love the title.
Thanks.
You were so gracious enough to have Justin, my co-founder, on the show. What was the vision behind the show? And of course, where can folks like dive in? What can they expect? Those sort of things.
Gosh, yeah. So it spawned out of just almost a throwaway post at the end of December last year that I made. And it was basically like I was kind of over all the content I was seeing on LinkedIn for the most part at that point. So a lot of people telling me what I should be doing, a lot of talking heads, and I'm like, you know what? It felt very too polished for my taste. I like to be prepared, but also like I am what you get, and that's sometimes rowdy and unscripted. And I was like, I want something that's similar to that, where we could have some real conversations. Originally, the idea was like, hey, let's talk about all things SaaS when it comes to like series, who's getting new series funding, all of that stuff. In all reality, when Kate reached out to me, she's like, hey, I'd be interested in doing this with you. We've evolved since January 1. So what was originally supposed to be like this just almost like info show where we were just kind of picking off topics and news has turned into this really cool thing where we're focusing on talking about and highlighting pre-series A nonprofit, or not nonprofits. I'm getting my wires mixed. Series A and below startups. And also highlighting the startups that are popping up that help marketers who are either single marketer or small marketing teams on those startups, right? It's kind of this intersection of where I live and where Kate lives on the other side. She's on the agency side, so she has a different point of view. Ultimately, where we're finding kind of our mission is like, that's our playing ground. It is, we are speaking to us and effectively. And y'all fit into that perfect spot. Like pre-series A, you're doing great things to help product marketers and small marketing teams, which is like where you're going, right? That's Asset Mule's tool. I use it. I know. Same thing, like a couple other organizations will be highlighting individuals over the next couple of weeks. And that's really just meant to be as a service to provide helpful insight, while also providing some understanding of, hey, these are some of the cool tools that are available for everyone to use.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know you spend also time putting together social posts, right, on LinkedIn that support or integrated into the podcast in different ways, whether it's like having guests from those organizations, but it looks like you're also like deploying a more holistic kind of approach. So it's not just the show, but it's this like again, content that supports insights, that supports sharing tools, these sort of things?
Yeah, we had, from the get go, both Kate and I were like, well, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And being marketers, we were like, well, the natural step is to take this big chunk of content and then distill that into smaller clips, distill this into posts that bring value, or a laugh or an eyeball roll or someone arguing with us or opposing our point of view. Like we have our individual points of view. Kate and I have done it on air a couple of times where we just like, no, we don't agree with each other. But like, that's the beauty of this. It's not meant to be some generic, like run of the mill podcast. So it's still evolving. It'll continue to evolve. I think we're on episode 13 or 14 now. Our goal is 20 by the year. So like we're cruising at this point.
That's awesome. Well, if folks wanted to learn more or tune in to the podcast, what are the best URLs to learn from?
You can search for us. We're on Spotify specifically. Don't Be a SaaS podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where we do a lot of our posts. If you search Don't Be a SaaS, we're probably going to be the only people showing up with that. So can't miss it. Kate and I's face are smacked all over that. So go find us on LinkedIn, where we engage pretty often. Or if you want to listen to the full episodes, it's on Spotify.
Yeah, and you can tell folks that there's that culture or that energy or that tone to the podcast just given the name. When I saw it, I was just laughing. I was like, that's awesome. It's such a perfect brand.
Yeah, Kate didn't realize what it was in reality until like a couple episodes in. She just texted me. She's like, yeah, I just realized the name. I lost it, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we just need to create. We need to get over our block, and this is how we're doing it. And it's turned into something really fun for us.
Awesome. Well, if folks wanted to get in contact with you, Adam, maybe learn more about I Donate, or just tap into your content to be able to learn more about SaaS and marketing and your journey and insights, what are the best? I'm gonna guess that I know the channel, but I'm just gonna ask anyways. What are the best channels to reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the place to be, as it seems like with everyone. So feel free to connect with me there. I'm pretty much on there, it feels like all day, running social accounts as well as my own. Drop me a line, connect, argue with me in the comments of any of my posts. I'm always game for that. If you are a nonprofit looking for new donation pages for your website, idonate.com is the place to be. Love to have you drop by and give us some thoughts on what we've got going on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day, and hope to meet you in person soon. I always say that because I'm a big in-person guy.
Same here. Let's figure out a way to do that. I would not be mad about it.
Awesome. Well, have a great day.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.